This program on women in science, technology, and business has been brought to you by Zoho Corporation.
Hello and welcome. I'm Kamla. My guest today is Amy Love. She's an entrepreneur and the Chief Marketing Officer at Violent Memory, a Silicon Valley-based company that is publicly traded. But we're going to be talking to Amy because she is the one because of what happened. Actually, let me read out something that was said about you way back in the 70s. You just might be the best-known 10-year-old girl in the Bay Area, wrote Tim Hunt in Tri-Valley Herald. This was, I think, in 74, 75. Why were you known as the best little girl in the Bay Area?
Well, in 1975, we had just recently moved back from Brazil. As a family, my dad had worked for Coca-Cola, so we traveled internationally for an assignment. Came back to the States, played Little League Baseball, no issue. In the fall, I tried out for soccer, a sport I had learned to play fairly well when we lived in Brazil. I made an all-star soccer team at the Danville level of the California Youth Soccer Association, which is a competitive soccer league. And I was told it wasn't acceptable for me to play.
So how did they tell you?
The roster came back with my name circled and the word not acceptable was written on the roster form. That's correct.
And that was publicly pasted or posted?
Correct. It came back. It's part of the public court documents associated with ultimately what became a federal class action lawsuit. Because my parents sat me down and said, Amy, they've decided you can't play. And I said, why? And they said, because you're a girl. And it's one of those kind of moments, defining moments for your family, when I said, as a naive little 9-year-old, what does the fact that I'm a girl have anything to do with my ability to play soccer?
You had not encountered that problem, that you were a girl when you tried for baseball and played for baseball?
No, apparently when we were living in Brazil, the issue about baseball had been resolved. Little League Baseball had simply made a determination that girls were allowed to play. But in soccer, they were holding very steadfast to the perspective that girls should not play with boys. And there were no competitive sports teams available for girls in soccer during the fall season. So this was completely unbeknownst to us. I simply just tried out and simply wanted to play on the best team. Because the joke was within my family is I loved sports. I wanted to be the next Hank Aaron and I wanted to be the next Pele. So why not play on the best team that you could? So I made the team and then I was told I couldn't play. So my parents decided, along with my entire family, my older brother, myself, that this wasn't right. And so we filed a federal class action lawsuit. We really had a great group of supporters come around us. First and foremost, 2 women attorneys, recent graduates from Bolt that had started a new law firm called Equal Rights Advocates.
And they're still around?
They are. They're located in San Francisco, and they took on our case. And then we filed it in the federal court system because the use of the fields denoted public access, and so that was a civil rights legislation issue. And what was interesting, it was myself as well as 13 other girls who were being told they were unable to play that had made competitive teams. So we ultimately got a initial judgment to allow myself and the other 13 girls to play while it played out in the court system. At the end of the day, public opinion was swaying in our favor, but there are a couple things that really helped in the process, in addition to simply pointing out the fundamental, inalienable right that if you have the skill set and the capabilities, you should be allowed to do what you seek out to do. And that was the President of the United States Soccer Federation. Kurt Lamb came forward and said all boys and all girls should have the right to play.
So he made that?
He made that statement, and he sent a letter to the California Soccer Association as well as all soccer leagues across the country stating that the United States Soccer Federation believed that all girls and all boys should have the right to play soccer.
This was while your case was in
While the case was still moving forward. In addition to that, Clive Toy, who was the president of the New York Cosmos, made a decision that he thought I should meet Pele in person.
Oh,
so when
so he's your star.
Exactly. So when New York Cosmos came to San Jose to play the San Jose Earthquakes, they arranged for me to have a one-on-one meeting in the locker room with New York Cosmos and to meet Pele. And this was long before viral marketing and social media came into play. But the photo of Pele and myself
This is the photo.
That is the photo. The photo of Pele and myself went viral and went worldwide, where Pele came out in support and said young girls should have the same right to play as boys.
Did you speak in English or Portuguese?
I did speak a little bit of Portuguese. At the time, having just come back from living there for a couple of years, I was more proficient in the language than I am today. But it was a really important moment when you had the United States Soccer Federation come forward and the world's best soccer player, still to this day, come forward and make a statement that girls should have the same right. And so that played out in the court systems, along with the perspective that in the United States, it is a belief that you should have the opportunity to pursue your dreams and your passions based upon your own abilities, not based upon your gender or your color or your religious beliefs or anything along those lines.
So did the president of the Soccer Federation come out because of the lawsuit?
Yes.
Okay. He should have come out prior to the lawsuit. Okay.
We'll take it when he came out.
Okay. So I'm assuming that all that went in helping your case.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what was the final judgment?
So the final judgment was in our favor, that girls should be allowed to play, that discrimination is discrimination, and that setting up a separate league at a different time is not providing equal competitive opportunities for girls versus boys.
So this is somehow tied to Title IX, right?
Actually separate. Title IX dealt with federal and federal funded schools, and Title IX is about any equal access, whether it be to labs or to classes, but it's most well known for its sports connection, to where Title IX at the federal level, where you receive federal funds, you must provide equal access. Our lawsuit dealt with civil rights legislation that says if you actually use public access, then you must provide equal access. In this case, youth soccer leagues use public school and park locations, which are funded through taxpayer dollars, and as a result, in that case, should receive equal access.
So do you remember what it was like when you got the judgment that you all had won?
You know, my parents reflect on it more than I do, but all I cared about was playing. I had a dream to be a professional athlete, and I wanted to play with the best team and the best teammates possible, with the best coaches. And it was kind of a non-starter for me. There ultimately was a book that came out called Girls Sports, and a series of articles, the CBS Evening News, the precursor to the National Enquirer, you name it, there was coverage. And it was one of those things where I was ready for it to be done. I just simply wanted to go on being a 9, 10-year-old who simply just wanted to be able to play soccer and play soccer at the best ability she could. And so I was actually never so happy than when my dad got promoted again within the Coke company and we moved to Oregon, and I thought I was moving beyond and away from all the noise. Because at the end of the day, it was simply about providing the right for all girls to play. It wasn't about Amy Love. This was about how do you provide the right for all girls if they have the skill set and the capability to play. And so it was nice to move beyond the media firestorm. What's funny with that, though, right, is 20-something years later, I end up moving back to the Bay Area, and ultimately, which I'm sure we'll get into, launching a company that has to do with women's sports, and then in the same city, town, and division, an issue around gender bias pops up again.
So same San Ramon area, East Bay.
Correct.
Same, your old neighborhood.
Correct.
And in what way did this come up?
So when I was in grad school, I had the opportunity to go to Harvard Business School. My undergraduate university, Texas Tech, won the national championship in basketball. And Cheryl Swoops set all the NCAA women's records. And so I wrote a business plan.
Who is Cheryl Swoops?
Cheryl Swoops is a women's college basketball player, first woman ever to have a shoe named after her. And so she had the Nike Air Swoops named after her. She broke every one of the collegiate records in basketball. And that was my undergraduate university. And so I wanted to follow this while I was in grad school and follow all the excitement of this phenomenal player playing in collegiate basketball. And you could get no coverage on it. So I wrote a business plan to launch a women's sports magazine, but decided...
What year are we talking about?
1993. But decided the timing wasn't right. So I put it on hold, graduated from business school, came out to the Bay Area, went to work for a consulting firm, ultimately went to work for a tech firm. I was the VP of sales and marketing for a technology firm that was about to go public, and dusted off my old business plan because Sports Illustrated was saying they were going to launch a magazine.
Got you.
But they launched the magazine, and it had Cheryl Swoops on the cover, holding a basketball, looking very pregnant, holding a basketball with these as the headlines. The coach is a sexual predator, are young girls safe? Why I Fell for Grant Hill, and Tanya and Nancy, which was the old ice skating.
Ice skating.
So
it was more like a National Enquirer headline.
Exactly. And this was Sports Illustrated Women. And so I dusted off my old business plan, called my family up and said, I've got to launch this magazine. I've got to move forward because women's sports deserves a legitimate sports magazine covering the...
Is this 95 or something?
This actually became 1998.
Oh, okay.
So in 1998, dusted it off. And in 1999, the Contra Costa Times, a major East Bay publication in the Bay Area, wrote a front page story about the magazine and talked about my time as a youth playing soccer and the lawsuit. And a father read that article and called me up and said, "You won't believe this, Amy." And I said, "What?" And he said, "The exact same city, town, and division has voted to disband the girls' all-star team."
Why?
Because they didn't feel girls should be competitive at that age.
This is 1998?
1999.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Well, why girls shouldn't be competitive at that? I mean, at the age of 9 and 10?
It is interesting. I really do feel oftentimes youth sports is still the last bastion of bias that is in America, because it's all based upon volunteers. And people get to bring their own perceptions, perspectives, and at times bias to play. And so I actually called up the commissioner to ensure that there were enough girls that wanted to play, that there were enough refs, that there were enough coaches, that there was enough competitive teams to play, and they said yes all the way across the board. And I asked him, "So why are we having this conversation?" And that's when he said that the parents running the league decided they did not feel girls should be competitive at that age. And so I asked him, I said, "Would you like this problem to be solved?" And he said, "Yes, I would love it to be solved." So I called up the Equal Rights Advocates, the same law firm that represented me in 1975, in 1999, still in business today in 2016. And I said, "Would you like to dust off the Love versus Steele?" Talk about a creative case name. It was Amy Love versus Ron Steele back in 1975, the commissioner for the league. They dusted off the lawsuit, sent it over there, and said, "This case has already been solved. Girls should have the right to play on competitive youth sports teams." And a week later, the team was playing.
So is the team, is that issue solved now for that area?
I would say
for your own neighborhood.
History has a tendency to repeat itself. And so I say that as of today, but who's to say what will happen 10 years from now or 20 years from now? When I published the magazine and this came forward, we did a deep look at bias in youth sports, and we came upon case upon case of situations where girls who were good enough to play on competitive sports teams were being denied, including a girl trying to play Little League Baseball down in Southern California. And again, this was a case that was solved.
Is it only team sports that this was happening? Because, you know, the time period that we are talking about, there was Billie Jean King, Chris Evert in tennis, so was it only with team sports that this was happening?
So I guess I would put it this way. In the 1970s, absolutely, you had Billie Jean King and you had Equal Rights Amendment and all of that, and Title IX. But you didn't have anything addressing the youth sports, and that's what our lawsuit did. But in 1999, you had the same situation. That's why my case had to be dusted off. That's why you still had issues down in Southern California. And if you think about it today, the United States women's national soccer team is suing for equal pay today. Because in fact, over the last year when the Women's World Cup was occurring, they actually generated more revenue than the men, but they are paid substantially less than the men. So as much as we might like to think that the issues of gender equity, about equal pay, whether it be in professional sports team or equal access in youth sports or even at the corporate environment, there is still a long way for us to go. And it's important for people to have a voice.
So what is that case called where the women from the soccer team are fighting for equal pay? Is that a federal case?
They right now have raised their case specifically against U.S. soccer, and that's how people can look up the case.
Okay. How did you get interested in sports?
You know, my father worked for Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola sponsors every sporting event imaginable. But in addition to that, my father played tennis in college, and my mom was a synchronized swimmer in college. So it was a family raised on the love and joy of what sports brings to the table. There's so many great lessons and life skills that you can learn from sports.
But what got you interested in baseball and soccer? Baseball, I understand. Soccer?
Well, with baseball, absolutely. When I was living in Atlanta, we had the opportunity to go see a lot of Atlanta Braves games, and Hank Aaron played for the Atlanta Braves. And
he's one of the top.
Yes. What a joy to see him play.
He was known as the Hammer.
Yes, just a love for the game and how well he played. It was also a sport that we played in the backyard and with family friends, and thoroughly enjoyed it. I didn't pick up soccer really until we moved to Brazil. And while I lived in Brazil, my older brother, David, he and his friends would play, and nobody usually wanted to play goalie. So if I wanted to play, I needed to volunteer, raise my hand. And so that's where I started learning to play goalie.
So you were a goalie?
I was a goalie and center forward, but I learned in Brazil to play goalie fairly well because my brother's friends wanted to play and nobody wanted to play goalie.
Okay. So Why didn't you become a professional athlete then, if you were so interested in sports and said at the age of 10 that you wanted to be playing in soccer or baseball?
You know, great question. I think life has a tendency to throw you curveballs at times, and I think it's what you take from those hurdles and how you adjust. When I was 15, I was working as a manager at McDonald's.
15?
At 15, and had a slip and fall, and resulted in 2 knee surgeries and 2 back surgeries. And so as a result, my professional aspirations for sports definitely took a back burner.
How did you slip and fall?
There was a plastic sign put on the other side of a swinging door, and as I was taking an order out to a car, my one foot stepped on it, and I slid out from underneath it and landed flat on my back.
Oh my God, that must have been horrible.
You know, life happens, right? So you move on from that. Definitely my sports career was limited as a result of that. But what I did is I really just rechanneled that energy into other activities. I'd always had a love for business. I was heavily involved in junior achievement in high school. And when I was in college, I got heavily involved in student politics, and ultimately resulting in being the student senate president and the student body president. So again, when Cheryl Swoops represents your university and you're so directly tied to the success of that university and you have such strong affiliation and affinity for it, you know, it's amazing how just life comes full circle. If I tried to play sports in college, I would have probably never been student body president. So it worked out just fine in terms of how it proceeded.
What did your dad do at Coke?
My dad was in both sales and marketing roles throughout his tenure at Coke.
So you followed his footsteps?
I did. I did. There's no question about it. It's funny, my father has both a law degree and an MBA. My brother has a law degree. I have an MBA.
Oh, so. Okay, so the children split.
Yes.
Okay, so why did you decide to go to Harvard?
For me, it was the unique approach they took to the case study method that really made a difference for me. The opportunity to be put in a situation, you have to think on your feet, have done the due diligence to understand the current situation, the problem, think through alternatives, and stand before your classmates of 80 fellow section mates and defend your position about what you would do in a leadership business role, and to do that over and over and over again for 2 straight years was a real life learning an environment that I thought I would thrive in, and thoroughly enjoyed my time there.
Did you deliberately select Harvard, or were there other schools that you had in your mind?
So I was looking at, I applied to 3 schools. There were 2 primary schools I was looking at, one of which was Northwestern, which is where Philip Kotler, the founder of marketing and the 4 Ps, taught, and Harvard. But ultimately made the decision that the case study method was the right choice for me.
And your dad, where did he do his MBA?
He did his MBA at Wharton.
Oh, so you didn't want to go to his...
Did not want to go to Wharton.
Why?
At the time, I was living in Texas, and the East Coast, if it hadn't been Harvard, it was already enough of a shift for me to go to an East Coast school. I like to point out my second year at Harvard, we had 180 inches of snow, and this Texan had a little bit of acclimation to do. So.
Okay, so after you finished your studies at Harvard, you joined Procter & Gamble?
No, I started off with Procter & Gamble after undergrad.
Okay.
So graduated from Texas Tech, went to work for Procter & Gamble, then went to business school after a few years, and then came out and went to work for Booz Allen Hamilton, a management consulting firm specializing in their marketing intensive practice.
And what was your involvement with Pert Plus?
So
the shampoo that we all use.
Yes. So Pert Plus, it was all about how do you create the combination of a 2-in-1 shampoo. That was the first shampoo to move forward with the 2-in-1 technology. And you know, that's really a hallmark of P&G, right? Invest so heavily in the brand technology and its efficacy and what it does, and then take it forward to where you leverage sales and marketing teams to effectively reach out to your consumers.
So what did you learn at working with the Pert Plus campaign?
Across the board, my tenure at P&G was all about the foundation of the important role that marketing can play. You need to have as I think of technology companies today, you've got to have a very strong product that either meets a specific need or uncovers new market opportunities. But at the end of the day, you've got to be able to effectively tell that story in a way that resonates with your target audience. And there's so much in consumer marketing that is directly applicable to business marketing, because at the end of the day, you're still dealing with people, and you've got to bring it down to where it resonates to them of what the value proposition is and is their trust and credibility. P&G has done a phenomenal job throughout its history as a company of establishing trust and credibility with its target audience. And B2B marketplaces have to do the same thing, especially in light of today's internet, where your B2B buyers typically are 70% the way through a buying cycle before they even talk to a salesperson ever. So the role of marketing in today's digital environment to create brand awareness and thought leadership and to influence the network of individuals who make decisions and can influence buyers has never been more important than it is today.
So that's the learnings that you bring to your current position.
Absolutely.
From the consumer market, where you also have to generate demand.
Correct.
It's just not marketing, but there's also money coming back from those marketing campaigns.
Right. I like to put it as the role of marketing today really has 5 key components. It's brand awareness, thought leadership, lead generation, demand generation, and sales enablement. All 5 of those pieces must come into play in any type of campaign you do. There may be different points of strength depending upon what you're doing with each of those, but it is in fact about how do you take this technological product set environment and communicate it in a way that the buyer themselves can see the reason for the purchase or the use, the return on investment, the acceleration of product development, the opportunity to make a competitive end around. Those elements are essential, and marketers today, through leveraging digital, must follow and approach all 5 of those steps in the process to effectively have a campaign that will have impact.
You have very clear ideas on marketing. Let's go back to real sports.
Okay.
So you were at Booz Hamilton?
I was at Booz Allen Hamilton, and then I became the VP of Sales and Marketing for Navtech. If you ever used MapQuest, you would have seen Navtech on board, which was a global
It was
brand.
a happening company.
It was a global brand I put in place in 1995 that was still in place more than 20 years later, which again goes back to great lessons you learn at P&G. You can apply in a B2B environment, is a well thought out brand that effectively conveys its value proposition to the audience, can stand the test of time. And so that was the first real test I had of being able to take a consumer mindset and lessons and learnings into a B2B environment. And I did that when I was the VP of Marketing and Sales for Navtech.
I remember seeing Navtech at Consumer Electronics show.
Yes.
And I think you had TomTom and Navtech.
Yep.
Those were the 2 players.
Yep.
And at one point it was a big deal. So what was it that, I know you said that because of swoops, you started Real Sports. You dusted off your old business plan. What happened to Real Sports? You launched it, and then what happened?
So Real Sports actually still resides as an entity. I actually bought the shareholders back. We publish an annual Most Important Moments in Sports edition that serves as the official authority in the space about what's occurred in women's sports in the last year. It is available at realsportsmag.com. We also have a large Facebook presence as well as blog presence. But the reality for the women's sports market is 6 of the 7 pro leagues cease to be in existence. And when that happens, you lose your feeder content that really makes a monthly publication thrive. You need that content, you need that story. So we covered professional, collegiate, and Olympic level sports and athletes. The Olympics happen every 4 years, right? So that's not a monthly content proposition. Collegiate athletics, it's interesting, the fans of collegiate sports are committed to their team, not to the sport. So if you don't cover the team that's of interest to the fan, they don't have interest in the content. And so you really were dependent upon the pro leagues, but when all but one failed, the only one that really resides today is the WNBA. The reality is
WNBA stands for?
Women's National Basketball Association.
That's the only one that exists?
That's the only one that exists.
And what are the others that died?
American Basketball League died. Women's professional volleyball with the women's beach volleyball has gone through several different iterations. There were 3 different attempts at different soccer leagues, including the Women's United Soccer Association, that was backed by what was termed the Billionaire Boys Clubs, the founder of Discovery, the founder of Continental Cable, where you had Mia Hamm and Brandi Chastain and Julie Foudy all playing. That went by the wayside right before the World Cup. So all of those created the sense of turmoil, and then your women's sports, your sports companies that had women's sports departments folded, so then you lost your advertiser base. And so at the end of the day, women's sports goes through a pendulum shift. Always has, continues to do so. So for us, while we pivoted and launched and became an events company and ran the Pac-10 women's basketball tournament, ultimately that's not what I set out to do. And it's one of the things I think that's a hallmark for me is with each of my teams, we set out a very bold vision about what we want to do, and then we work together to go achieve it. For Real Sports, we set out to change the way mainstream media covers women's sports and to demonstrate that a business focused on women's sports can be profitable. We, without a doubt, changed the way mainstream media covered women's sports, but with only one pro league and no sports marketing departments, it makes it fairly hard to run that as a profitable business.
Can you do something else today?
Can I do something else today?
With women in
sports?
Is there a different way of segmenting that market?
Well, I think what I've done today is actually transition it to an online annual publication that serves as the definitive authority in the space around what's actually happened in women's sports. And then we run through Facebook our ongoing conversation and dialogue with our fan base. And I think for today, that's really where women's sports is.
If you were a 10-year-old today, what sports would you be playing?
If I was a 10-year-old today, I don't think there would be much different. I would play soccer, I would play baseball, and then when I was tall enough, I'd play basketball.
But there's Facebook and there's all these other social networks available. So would you have gone there to plead your case?
I think in today's environment, if we ran into a similar situation, without a doubt, you'd leverage social media to build up the groundswell of support. Just like the picture with Pele served when the national outlets picked it up, I think without a doubt social media would play. But it is interesting that even in social media, not everybody agrees with your position. There also was several stories written about how I was ruining soccer. And in fact, there's one famous one where a reporter wrote me an open letter to Amy Love, the daughter of David and Joanne Love.
That's the one that I said the most...
Yeah. Well, no, this is a different one from that one.
Okay.
In this letter, this open letter, the person said, I'm ruining soccer because I'm taking away the opportunity for a boy to play as a youth because at some point in time, he would be able to get a college scholarship and not me. Well, fast forward, guess what? Girls today can get college scholarships. So you have to be careful no matter what, that whether you're using viral social media or the press itself, you're never going to have 100% support for any idea or position. But you've got to stay true to your conviction about what you think is right and be willing to stand up for it. And that's what my parents were willing to do, what my brother and I were willing to do, and what those that surrounded us were willing to do.
Really quickly, because we have less than a minute, what are your thoughts on social media today? Because you're Chief of Marketing at Violin Memory and you probably use social media.
Absolutely. I think social media is a phenomenal tool when used for good and can be a tool that can really bring negativity up as well.
Okay, so it's got pluses and minuses.
It does.
My last question, you're a mother of a young daughter.
I am.
What is her favorite sport?
Maddie's favorite sport is swimming right now.
Oh, she's taken after a granny.
She is. Her favorite sport is swimming, but I would actually say her favorite thing is actually reading.
Really?
And so it's all I can do to encourage what her passion is. And her passion to date hasn't been sports. Her passion today is reading. And it's a joy as a mom to encourage that, which is unique to her, and it's reading.
So she reaches out for books?
Absolutely. We are officially the most well-read family out of the Los Gatos Library with the number of books she has checked out.
Really?
And I give many thanks to our nanny who actually helps to facilitate that as well.
And so she goes and picks the books from the library?
She does. They actually go online and they review what books are available and she makes the selections about which ones she wants to read.
No Kindle for her?
Not as of yet.
Why?
I think it's important to have a tactile perspective and to curl up with a book and feel a connection. There's plenty of time for her to engage in a digital environment. She'll peek a view at a video here and there, but for the most part, we're all about being outdoors, reading books, being part of a conversation. And as a 3-year-old, she can carry on a conversation as well as anyone I know.
And she met the president?
She did.
What did she say?
She practiced her speech, which was, "Hello, Mr. President. It's a pleasure to meet you."
What did he say?
He was smiling and almost, I think, in shock. And I must admit, it was actually President Clinton, so it was a past president.
Okay. Thank you so much, Amy, for stopping by and talking to us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you for watching. We'll be back again with another episode. If you missed any of our shows, you can watch them on our YouTube channel.
This program on women in science, technology, and business has been brought to you by Zoho Corporation.